Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Ashtyn and I make faith videos here on YouTube. And as you can tell from the title of this video, today we are jumping into Ecclesiastes Chapter 7. If you haven't joined me for Bible study for Ecclesiastes chapters 1 through 6, and I highly recommend you do that. I will have that in the cards. Can't remember which side it's on, but I'll have that playlist linked in the cards and also in the description box below so that you can check out those videos before we hop into today's. If you are already caught up, then great. Make sure you grab your Bible, make sure you grab pen, paper, maybe something to drink, and let's hop right into this Bible study. So before we read, I do just want to give a little bit of context because the book of Ecclesiastes, and really this chapter specifically, is a lot like the book of Proverbs. And wisdom literature is not the easiest to study in this format because there isn't one clear story or takeaway or through line from the chapter, but rather it's a bunch of different phrases, different verses, and things like that. And it's mostly just observations about life. And so when we study them or read them, we are really being invited to consider what wisdom looks like in light of these observations that we're being given. It's important to keep in mind that we are looking at Solomon's perspective of life, right? So that's why I said if you haven't watched 1 through 6 or just read chapters 1 through 6, then that's going to be really important as we get into chapter 7, just so you have the context and the history of who is speaking. When we think about Solomon, this is a man who had access to everything that a person could dream of, right? He had money, he had all of the things, he had power, he had access, he had more than the number of wives that he should have, right? According to the laws and the governments that God set into place. And up until this point, he has spent much of this book examining all these things and specifically asking questions like what actually matters, what makes a life meaningful, and how should we live knowing that so much of life is temporary and outside of our control. So we're going to read through chapter 7 together. And again, I'm just going to highlight some general themes that I see versus just going verse by verse like we usually do in some of my other Bible studies. I'm reading from the Tony Evans Study Bible. As you can see, it is well loved, but this is the Christian Standard Bible. So starting at verse 1, it says, "A good name is better than fine perfume, and the day of one's death is better than the day of one's birth. It is better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting, since that is the end of all mankind, and the living should take it to heart. Grief is better than laughter, for when a face is sad, a heart may be glad. The heart of the wise is in a house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in a house of pleasure. It is better to listen to rebuke from a wise person than to listen to the song of fools. For like the crackling of burning thorns under the pot, so is the laughter of the fool. This too is futile. Surely the practice of extortion turns a wise person into a fool, and a bribe corrupts the mind. The end of a matter is better than its beginning. A patient spirit is better than a proud spirit. Don't let your spirit rush to be angry, for anger abides in the heart of fools. Don't say, 'Why were the former days better than these?' since it is not wise of you to ask this. Wisdom is as good as an inheritance and an advantage to those who see the sun, because wisdom is protection as silver is protection. But the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the life of its owner. Consider the work of God, for who can straighten out what he has made crooked? In the day of prosperity be joyful, but in the day of adversity consider. God has made the one as well as the other, so that no one can discover anything that will come after him." Verse 15, "In my futile life, I have seen everything. Someone righteous perishes in spite of his righteousness, and someone wicked lives long in spite of his evil. Don't be excessively righteous, and don't be overly wise. Why should you destroy yourself? Don't be excessively wicked, and don't be foolish. Why should you die before your time? It is good that you grasp the one and do not let the other slip from your hand, for the one who fears God will end up with both of them. Wisdom makes the wise person stronger than 10 rulers of a city. There is certainly no one righteous on the earth who does good and never sins. Don't pay attention to everything people say, or you may hear your servant cursing you. For in your heart you know that many times you yourself have cursed others. Verse 23, I have tested all this by wisdom. I resolved I will be wise, but it was beyond me. What exists is beyond reach and very deep. Who can discover it? I turned my thoughts to know, explore, and examine wisdom and an explanation for things, and to know that wickedness is stupidity and folly is madness. And I find more bitter than death the woman who is a trap, her heart a net and her hands chains. The one who pleases God will escape her, but the sinner will be captured by her. Look, says the teacher, I have discovered this by adding one thing to another to find out the explanation, which my soul continually searches for but does not find. I found one person in 1,000, but none of those was a woman. Only see this, I have discovered that God made people upright, but they pursued many schemes. God made people upright, but they pursued many schemes. And that's kind of where we're going to park for the overall theme of this video, and specifically this chapter. So God made man upright, but they have sought out many schemes. So I have 3 different points, or 3 overall principles that we can get from this chapter. And the first is that we need wisdom because we live in a fallen world. We need wisdom because we live in a fallen world. One of the questions that people always wrestle with, and one of the questions that I've heard a lot recently, is if God is so good, why is there so much evil in the world? If God is so good, why does he allow so much suffering? If God is so good, why is he not taking me out of this hard situation that I find myself in, right? I have asked that question before. I'm sure you have asked that question before. It's a question as old as time, right? But Solomon in this verse reminds us that evil did not originate with God, right? He made man upright, but man has sought out many schemes. When God created humanity, he called his creation good. But sin has distorted what God has created. And a lot of times we blame God for the things that our sinfulness in our human flesh has created and sought out and devised, right? And that is why we need wisdom. In James 1:5, it tells us, now if any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives to all generously and ungrudgingly, and it will be given to him. God desires to give us wisdom. God desires to give us what we need. He has given us what we need to live a life of godliness, right? So we need God's wisdom because we are trying to navigate a world that is affected by sin while also dealing with our own flesh nature, right? As long as we are on this side of heaven, our spirit and our flesh is at odds with each other, right? And so with wisdom, we can know how to satisfy the spirit while denying the flesh, right? So one of the things that wisdom does is help us see life correctly, right? So our point number 2 is that wisdom keeps a proper perspective. Wisdom keeps a proper perspective. And I'm going to kind of walk through some of the verses where we see this point. Starting with verse 9, it says, don't let your spirit rush to be angry, for anger abides in the heart of fools. Wisdom gives us a perspective of our emotions, right? Don't let your spirit rush to be angry. When I read that, I thought about James 1:19, where it says, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. These verses don't say that we shouldn't get angry, right? Anger is a natural human emotion, but it does say do not rush to be angry. Do not be quick to anger. Be slow to anger, right? So wisdom gives us a proper perspective on our emotions, as it says in verse 9, for anger abides in the heart of fools. That word abides, if we think about John 15, that word abide means to live in. It means to dwell. So anger should not dwell. It should not live continuously in your heart, right? It does in the heart of fools. So wisdom gives us a proper perspective of our emotions. Wisdom also gives us a proper perspective on our past. Verse 10 says, don't say, why were the former days better than these, since it is not wise of you to ask this. Wisdom gives us a proper perspective of our past. When I read this, I was thinking about the Israelites in Egypt, right? And how when they are wandering in the wilderness, they keep looking back like, surely you didn't bring us here to die. Things were so much better in Egypt, right? When we look back on our past, when we ask the question, why were the former days better than these? We lose the perspective of what God is trying to do in our current present circumstances, right? And we just have a natural tendency to romanticize the past. I don't know if you have ever gotten out of a relationship and maybe you've been lonely, or maybe you've been just hurting and in pain. And when you look back on that relationship, you felt the positive things, but you forget maybe that you prayed for God to deliver you from that relationship, or you begged God to get you out of that job, or you begged God to move you out of that living arrangement, right? When we are in situations that feel frustrating, or we don't feel as far along as we should, we tend to romanticize the past. But wisdom can appreciate the past without living in it. And the other thing that I wanted to highlight here is that different doesn't always mean better, right? Just because a past season was different doesn't mean that it's better than where God has you right now, because the best place for you to be is in the will of God. Wisdom also gives us a proper perspective on our circumstances. Wisdom gives us a proper perspective on our circumstances. Looking at verses 14 through 18, it says, in the day of prosperity, be joyful, right? So when things are good, when you are on the mountaintop, be joyful. But in the day of adversity, when things are hard, when you find yourself in a valley, consider God has made the one as well as the other. He has made your good days and your bad days. He has made your mountaintop moments and your valleys. God has made the one as well as the other, so that no one can discover anything that will come after him. Verse 15, in my futile life, I have seen everything. Someone righteous perishes in spite of his righteousness, and someone wicked lives long in spite of his evil. So not only does God create our days of prosperity and our days of adversity, but we also see that good days and bad days aren't dependent on our righteousness, right? Because Solomon says, I have seen the righteous perish, and I have seen the evil live long. So verse 16, don't be excessively righteous and don't be overly wise. Why should you destroy yourself? Don't be excessively wicked and don't be foolish. Why should you die before your time? It is good that you grasp the one and do not let the other slip from your hand. For the one who fears God will end up with both of them. And I love the way that Tony Evans puts it in his commentary. He says, if you consume yourself with trying to figure out what God doesn't explain, you'll only get a headache. As sure as we don't always answer our kids' why questions because we know it wouldn't be appropriate to do so, or because they wouldn't understand anyway, God often does not reveal his ways to us. That he has made the day of prosperity and the day of adversity is a reminder that he is sovereign. When things are out of your control, thank God that they are in his control. Develop a spiritual viewpoint. And then he goes on to say that Solomon is talking about going beyond what God requires. That approach is exactly what the Pharisees did. They added their own standards to God's standards, and in the name of righteousness became self-righteous and wise in their own eyes. When we become self-righteous, wise in our own eyes, when we become prideful, then we start to become entitled and think God owes us something, or that we don't deserve suffering because we are doing so well, right? But the truth of the matter is, the only reason why we are able to be good is because God has given us the strength to do so, right? In Philippians, it says that it is God who works in us and gives us what we need in order to even do good, in order to please him. So the fact that we become self-righteous is literally to dismiss the fact that our righteousness is only because of the Christ that's in us. So like we said, we are going to have good days and bad days. We were not promised a life without suffering, but wisdom knows how to receive both the good and the bad without allowing either one to distort our view of God. Again, wisdom allows us to view both the good days and the bad days both the mountaintop and the valley moments without distorting our view of God, because he's good on the mountain and he's good in the valley. He's faithful on the mountain and he's faithful in the valley. He's just on the mountain and he's just in the valley, right? Wisdom gives us a proper perspective on our circumstances. It also recognizes God's transcendence, right? The fact that he is above us, the fact that his ways are higher than our ways, the fact that his thoughts are higher than our thoughts. So it helps us to recognize his transcendence and our dependence, right? Because we are dependent on him for our righteousness, right? And I think it's also important for us to remember that there is no formula, right? We are not working for gold stars. If I'm perfect and do good things, then God won't allow anything bad to happen to me. That is a false ideology, right? Matthew 5:45 says that God makes his sun rise on the evil and the good and send rain on the just and the unjust, right? So again, this is not an encouragement to just live unrighteously, because bad things are going to happen anyway and suffering is going to happen and you can't predict it, right? But this is an encouragement to not think that we get to control our life based on our own righteousness, right? And I think a lot of us fall into that, maybe not on purpose, but just in a desire to make sense of this thing called life. But the purpose is not to make sense of this thing called life, but it's to trust the one who's in control of it. Lastly, for this, when we're talking about wisdom giving us a proper perspective, is that wisdom gives us the proper perspective of ourselves. And again, this is just piggybacking off of the last point in terms of righteousness. Verse 20 says, there is certainly no one righteous on the earth who does good and never sins. And sometimes we just need a reminder of that, especially when you have been a Christian for a long time. I think there are two sides of the coin, right? There may be the person who just always sees themselves as a sinner, right? Who never sees their redemption, who can never receive God's grace. And then we have the other side of the person who maybe has been a Christian for a long time, or is a new Christian and is very zealous, right? And only sees their righteousness, only sees their good, and comes off really judgmental or harsh to people who maybe haven't had that same transformation yet, or people who are still struggling. And I think this verse is such a good reminder that we have all fallen short of the glory of God. And the only reason that we are good is because God has made us so through the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, right? So wisdom requires the self-awareness to see that we are here because of God's grace and mercy, and every single day we are still in need of it. Every single day we are still in need of it. So point number 1 was that we need wisdom because we live in a fallen world. Point number 2 is that wisdom keeps a proper perspective. And point number 3 is that wisdom knows there's a better way. Throughout this chapter, we see Solomon repeatedly say that it is better for X, Y, and Z. So in verse 1, he says, a good name is better than fine perfume. Our character is more valuable than our image, right? We can spend so much time trying to look right that we actually miss what God is doing to make us right, right? We want to look right for the internet. We want to look right for our friends, for our peers, whatever the case may be. But sometimes we are missing out what God is actually trying to do because we're so focused on our appearance, right? A good name, our character, is better than fine perfume. Verses 2-3, it says, it is better to go to a house of mourning than to go to a house of feasting. That sounds kind of bad, right? Since that is the end of all mankind, and the living should take it to heart. Grief is better than laughter. What are you talking about? Grief is better than laughter, for when a face is sad, a heart may be glad. Death forces us to confront something that celebration allows us to temporarily forget, right? When we go to funerals, we are overcome with the realization, with the reminder that life is short, that life is but a vapor, right? And we learn things in difficult places that we may never learn when everything is comfortable. Dr. Evans, he says, at the funeral home, things get real. You're obliged to stare at a casket and admit to yourself One day that's going to be me in there. A visit to a funeral will remind you of what's important and that your days are numbered. It will help you live with an eternal perspective. 2 Corinthians 7:10, it says, godly sorrow brings repentance that leads to salvation and leaves no regret. But worldly sorrow brings death. And while, this verse specifically is comparing godly sorrow versus worldly sorrow, that first clause says godly sorrow brings repentance that leads to salvation and leaves no regret. So when it says it is better to go to a house of mourning, there are some things that mourning, there are some things that sorrow, there are some things that grief, there are some things that we can only learn in those moments. And then we move on to verse 5, which says that wisdom isn't just concerned with what feels good. It says it is better to listen to rebuke from a wise person than to listen to the song of fools. Wisdom also cares about what helps us grow, not just what makes us feel good. That says, in the multitude of counsel, there is safety. One of the marks of wisdom is being teachable enough to receive correction, right? And then we look at verse 8. It says, the end of a matter is better than its beginning. A patient spirit is better than a proud spirit. We love beginnings. I love beginnings. I love starting something. I love having a new idea. I love the beginning of a year, right? We love new beginnings because excitement comes with new beginnings, but endurance comes with ending. Excitement comes with new beginnings, but endurance comes with endings. And in the middle of that, we have patience that develops, right? It says the end of a matter is better than its beginning, and a patient spirit is better than a proud spirit. Wisdom understands that everything that's meaningful won't happen quickly. And sometimes you have to stay with something long enough to see what God is producing in it. So again, as we close out this video and look at the entirety of Ecclesiastes Chapter 7, we see that we need wisdom because we live in a fallen world. We see that wisdom keeps a proper perspective, and we see that wisdom knows that there is a better way. Wisdom knows that there is a better way. One of the greatest marks of wisdom is simply realizing that I don't know everything. I can't control everything, but I serve a God who does, right? So if you've made it to the end of this video, then I would love to hear from you. Which verse from this chapter challenged you most today? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoy these Bible studies, and be sure to like this video and also subscribe. You can also check out the playlist on my channel if there is another book that you would like to study with me. As always, I love you. Jesus loves you so much more, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.